All right, guys, today we're going to be reacting to America's Not Europe. America's Not Europe. Some of you guys might say, you know what, Pablo? We know the America's not Europe. You don't get it? You don't get it? But some people have the tendency to see the lens of America, from Europeans, that is, as Europe. And we're completely different countries in a lot of ways, even in values and culture. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. Our way of life very different. Our way of life different. Even though we share certain things as descendant of Europeans, we do have different tendency of just approach things differently. Let's see what this video has to say, and let's jump in.
And these are countries where the government spends taxes and spends approximately twice the level of the United States. Mm-hmm. And while I am very sympathetic to many of your spending proposals, especially on the things you mentioned on early childhood and single payer and the like, I also know that these are countries that heavily tax everybody. Dang. Not just the rich people, middle classes. They have consumption taxes on everything of 20%. So while I'm very sympathetic to what you say, my sense is still that you would like to spend as a Scandinavian, but not tax as one. Is that correct?
We have, the answer is...
Bernie Sanders, not a fan of the guy. I'm going to just say it from the get-go. At the beginning, he has some momentum. All of a sudden, he put his tail between his legs. Thing got real. Some of the Clintons, they were telling him, hey, Sanders, you're kind of out of control, man. You better just know your place. And he just went back. Yeah, I don't trust this guy. This guy from Brooklyn, don't trust him.
And you raised some very good points.
Comparing the US with Europe and countries in Europe would be naive, oversimplistic, and offend a bunch of people. Land masses are complex. But I'm going to go ahead and compare them anyways, because some of the comparisons between Europe and the US remain way too superficial.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Yeah, we don't like taxes.
It's not uncommon to obsess over the usual suspects for why the US is less equal than Europe and also has less good quality, affordable social programs. The analysis is simple. The US has more billionaires and taxes them less. Europe has less billionaires but taxes them more. Need a larger tax base to fund popular social programs and also less inequality? Just raise the taxes on the rich, like the Europeans do. Now, although the tax rates for rich people explain some part of the difference, it doesn't
I want to see this graphics because sometimes this graph, they just show there too quick, right? So let me see. What does this mean? Share income? Bottom 50%, top 51, top 1%. Europe, okay? All over the world. West and North Europe. God damn, I don't understand this graph.
Explain enough. Europeans can afford good social programs because a lot of Europeans pay a lot for them, mainly through indirect taxes. And Europeans are also more equal before taxes even factored in because a lot of the social programs they pay more for also reduce pre-tax inequality. But the US has, so far, been unable to adopt the same. Why? Well, in part because taxing the wealthiest of society. In Europe, most people don't really need to be convinced about paying for their welfare states because it works sufficiently for most of them. But in the US, there's an intimate struggle with deciding whether pre-distribution will be a state, local, or federal solution. Part of the reason is that in the US, the federal government gets the most media attention, while state and local governments can avoid scrutiny. This means that minimum wage hikes in the US are practically always seen as a responsibility for the federal government, which has to delicately balance different costs of living, like laborers living in New York City and miners living in West Virginia. In Europe, though, a country like France or Denmark can opt for different geographically sensitive policy while also being held more directly into account because the assignment of responsibility is clearer to its citizens.
There's this definition of a wicked problem, which is circulating around in the literature, which suggests that a wicked problem is wicked if it has so many dimensions to it that you can't go at one angle to the problem and try to fix it. And I think school finance is like that. So school districts get money from their local communities in the form of property taxes. They'll also get money from the state, and the state might give them money through multiple formulas. And then a portion, a much smaller portion, about 9 or 10%, comes from the federal government. So even if you tried to solve the problem at, say, the state level, there are these other funding sources that come with their own restrictions, which ultimately affect how the money gets used in schools.
In Connecticut, a U.S. state, a school in Bridgeport will be poorer by virtue of being surrounded by poor properties, while a school in Greenwich will be richer because it is surrounded by richer properties. This is because local taxes are largely funded by property values in the area. However, this concept fails to explain everything. Educational disparities also exist across Europe and within its countries. The US is not unique for having a system that predisposes poor children to poorer resources. Education systems are complex. Finland is not the same as Sweden, and resources invested in education and the quality that follows does not seem like a linear relationship.
Why? So a lot of these studies that they do not understand the culture behind our system. That's where a lot of these folks fail, right? They're trying to put a square inside a circle. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just how our system is built, incentivize, productivity. And it's not because it's a better system than Europe. It's just how we are built as a nation, right? I don't like my money to be spent by the government. But then in Europe, you might just get the difference. Like, people might just trust the government a little bit more with their money. You see what I'm saying? It's a different. I don't trust. How you visit? Well, I don't know you guys, but you go to government buildings here, man. They smell bad. They're not even that good. They're not even good, and they get a lot of money. They're making $60,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year just to sit down in a chair, just type. But their buildings suck, smell. They don't give you the good service. They're always late. The system that we have is not. The more taxes, more money you get into the federal government, it gets big but doesn't get efficient. Completely different, folks. A lot of you guys, I understand where you're coming from when it comes down from your perspective, but it's not the same. United States does not spend their money the same as Europe. It's completely different, folks.
The US's unique situation is that its quality does not match the amount that the US actually spends on it. One of the problems with answering why resources don't match the quality you would expect in the US is because the decentralized nature of school districts makes it pretty difficult to actually identify what spending works and what doesn't. Overall, there are some indications that, compared with Europe, the amount of staffing, the associated health and retirement benefits, alongside transportation, all add up to more costs for the American education system. But the differences don't end there.
In the 1990s, as the crime rate was plummeting, as American life was getting safer and safer, Americans freaked out and thought that if they take their eyes off their children, the children will be abducted. Now, this goes back, the fear was stoked by cable TV in the 1980s. There were a few high-profile abductions. But it's not until the 1990s that we really start locking kids up and saying, you cannot be outside until you're 14 or 15. We took this essential period of childhood from about 8 to 12, when kids throughout history have practiced independence, have gotten into adventures, have made rafts and floated down the Mississippi River. We took that period and said, you don't get to practice independence until it's too late, until that period is over.
Bro, that's kind of insane, bro. That is kind of insane. I'm a country boy. I'm back in Puerto Rico. I was raised in the mountains. I would just travel miles and miles and foot. Just do crazy things, but there was no adoption stuff there. It was a small town, probably 10,000 people. Everybody knows everybody. You do something wrong, and people will know. But now you cannot do that. Like it's kind of crazy, folks. Man, sometimes these simplistic arguments are kind of weird, man. This dude is
Kids
crazy.
in the US are raised differently than kids in Europe. Some blame the planning that produced more isolated American families, some the over-paranoia towards kidnapping in the 1980s, and others point to an increasingly competitive environment where parents...
People act like, man, like child trafficking is not a thing here in the United States, man. It's a billion-dollar industry. Plus the political environment that's going on here, man. Nobody protecting your kid, man.
Try to give their children an edge over the others by helicoptering them. It's really not that far a stretch to say that many European children could be considered to have more freedom at an earlier age. American children are less likely to be able to walk to school alone compared with European children, which you can of course connect to overall crime rates, and authoritative school policy is still much more accepted across the US than it is in Europe.
So, the real key to the distinctiveness of America is the structure of our government. One part of it, of course, is the independence of the judiciary. But there's a lot more. There are very few countries in the world, for example, that have a bicameral legislature. Oh, England has a House of Lords for the time being, but the House of Lords has no substantial power. They can just make the Commons pass a bill a second time. France has a Senate, it's honorific. Italy has a Senate, it's honorific. Very few countries have two separate bodies in the legislature equally powerful. That's a lot of trouble, as you gentlemen doubtless know, to get the same language through two different bodies elected in a different fashion. Very few countries in the world have a separately elected chief executive. Sometimes I go to Europe to talk about separation of powers. And when I get there, I find that all I'm talking about is independence of the judiciary. Because the Europeans don't even try to divide the two political powers, the two political branches, the legislature and the chief executive. In all of the parliamentary countries, the chief executive is the creature of the legislature. There's never any disagreement between them and the prime minister, as there is sometimes between you and the president. When there's a disagreement, they just kick them out. They have a no confidence vote, a new election, and they get a prime minister who agrees with the legislature. And, the Europeans...
The difference is simple. European countries are mainly nations, not federations.
One of the modern, more conservative Supreme Court of the land. Very conservative.
State, if it existed, could never be the same as the US. Written in their constitution, US states are modeled after the federal government, and state governments, which mirror the one above, usually...
Oh man, I can think about Louisiana, Texas. My God. Even here in the United States, man, Louisiana to Maine. Oh, what a difference. Oh. Even their state government is so different, man. It's insane. It's just insane. Even here in the United States, each state is so different. And I'm telling you because I live in a different states. Travel around the country. It's so different, my goodness. Even here in the United States, the state itself are so different. Even the way they just create legislator, too late to just be a lawyer right now. But the thing is that something that I noticed in a lot of Europe, right, is that somehow you guys are more closer to the social policies, right? Nothing wrong with that. It seems like it works for you guys. I think that's great. I hope it just gets better by the time, right? Doesn't get worse. Nothing bad happens. And I'm okay. I'm okay opening my mind to think like, there might be some good things to that nature, right? However, in the case of the United States, different cultures, different areas of Europe. I mean, talking Hispanic. I mean, Africa. I mean, bro, we can just go on. This thing is gonna take years, man, to figure out. United States still feels like a damn experiment, man. A damn experiment, right? But very good video. A lot to learn, a lot to really take into consideration, a lot to think about. But let me know what you guys think. You guys really hate me when I do these videos? Put them in the comment section below. You love that I do this kind of video? Put them in the comment section below. If you disagree with me or agree with me, put them in the comment section below, folks. Meantime, like always, I will see you in the next one.